Tabitha Williams, and welcome to What's Eating Harlem. We cover the most exciting community in the world. There's so much happening in Harlem. Let's get started. He's a jazz singer, a writer, a composer, and believe it or not, he's also a black cowboy. He put all those talents together to create his stage play, Cross That River. Alan Harris sits down with What's Eating Harlem to tell us all about the contributions black cowboys made to the Wild Wild West. And we discuss his stage play.
When we think about the economy of New York City and Wall Street, it's impossible to truly understand its origins without understanding that enslaved people were the foundations of building this economy.
You probably know about Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad. But did you know there was an Underground Railroad in New York City? Our tour guide, Stacey Toussaint, takes us for a ride through the New York City slave trail. All that and more coming up next. Black Cowboys, a story that's seldomly told. Tonight, we hear it through Alan Harris's musical composition and playwright, Cross That River.
Alan Harris, composer, writer of Cross That River.
From?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but I spent my formative years from age 11 to whatever on my grandfather's farm in Pennsylvania.
And what made you want to compose and write Crossing That River?
Oh, it happened when I was basically in the 5th grade. I went to Catholic school here, St. Matthew's and St. John's Prep. On the summer program, after summer, kids would come back to school and you'd have to do something for the nuns. Sang a song or whatever, or write an essay. I wrote an essay on my summers on my grandfather's farm at 600 acres. And I remember talking about how men of color on that farm rode horses and cattle. And she stopped, the nun stopped the class and called me a liar in front of the whole class. Not only did she call me a liar, she sent me down to the office and the principal said to me, Mr. Harris, you can't fib because everyone knows there are no black cowboys. That's what she said. It was really, she admonished me. And my mother and father had to come up to the school and actually look at her and say, are you serious? And that prompted me to write it later on in my years because I found that my peers who I played with, musicians and that, and people that I know, they have no idea that we as people of color not only helped build the West, we were a big part of it. And so I decided to write something that was more than just rhetoric, you know, being on a pulpit. Best to say it through a musical and through music. And here we are.
And so can you tell me part of the plot and the storyline for the play?
Okay. It's historical fiction. It's based upon an ex-slave named Blue, who's the protagonist, which is me, and I have a younger counterpart, which you'll see tonight. It starts off in 1859, and he runs away because of circumstances on a Louisiana plantation, which is a horse farm. He's good with horses. He runs across the Sabine River into Texas and is befriended by a white ranch owner, becomes a cowboy, And right during the Civil War and afterward, beginning of the great cattle drives, he's part of the cattle drives that they moved cattle, Longhorn, from there to the east because meat was depleted because of the Civil War. So I based the story around him. There's Native American Indians, homesteaders, disgruntled Confederate soldiers who are now out there riding alongside of black people. So the story revolves around him meeting the love of his life who dies. You know? And it takes us from Texas to Abilene, and the story unfolds with him looking back on his life.
Dancing Annie, she was rolling down the gal. Every Sunday all the cowboys rolled down. And the working girls would leave their money down. If you touch her down and see the street to hell.
It's so much material all in one. I mean, you've covered a specific time period. Now, let's just back it up. You said black cowboys. How do you personally define a cowboy?
Well, that's interesting because I've been really reticent about that to different people. There's movies called Posse, Django, and those movies, and those aren't cowboys. Those are just brothers who look good carrying guns.
Well, please inform me.
A cowboy is someone who works with cattle exclusively. And they were very specialized in what they do. And most cowboys didn't know how to use a gun. They didn't, they used rifles. A gun was too heavy. It was 9 pounds of lead on their hip. They didn't wear guns. It was just too cumbersome. They couldn't work cattle, couldn't lasso, couldn't do the things they had to do. If you ever had 9 pounds of metal on you and ride a horse to brush, it's almost impossible. So that myth should be put to rest. They were not, what you see on TV, white and black, most of them never even carried a 6-gun. They carried rifles.
So you would put the rifle on your back?
No, you put it in a scabbard.
Okay.
And they use it to hunt wolves or coyote or Native Americans if they were in trouble. But most cowboys couldn't shoot. They would hire what they call a ramrod. Ramrod, the trail boss would hire someone who would be on the trail with him, and all the ramrod did was he just protected everyone. He didn't know how to work cattle, he didn't know how to lasso, and he didn't know how to break a horse. He just rode a special horse, and that was it. So the myth about cowboy, what the word cowboy, should be erased. Cowboy means that you work with cattle, and you have to be very specialized.
And so what skills also accompany being a cowboy? Like I've heard some terms such as bulldogging.
That's right, wow.
But I don't understand what they all are.
Okay, that's amazing. Okay, well, bulldogging was invented by a black man, a man of color called Bill Pickett from the XXL ranch. He was a fabulous athlete, and he invented what they call bulldogging. This is amazing. Now they run on a horse in the rodeo, and they get a cow and they twist his neck off a cow. That's a bastardized version of it. The original bulldogging he invented was he would run alongside a cow, jump on him, and bite him on the nose. In fact, there's pictures of it if you YouTube it of him doing it.
Well, certainly.
Right, and it is. He was a bad brother. And he demonstrated that. Matter of fact, Will Rogers had what they call a Will Rogers Folly. He invited him to Madison Square Garden to do this with Tom Mix and a bunch of other artists. He was one of the first blacks to integrate that. He invented bulldogging. He learned it from a plantation he was on because the slave owner had catch dogs, which they hunted blacks with. And he saw one of the catch dogs, it's called American Bulldog now. He saw this bulldog come up to a cow, bite him on the nose, and twist him. And when you bite a cow on the nose, a bull on the nose, it freezes them. There's some sort of nerve ending that just freezes the cow. He invented that. Anyway, that's where bulldogging comes from. So you have to have that skill. Plus you have to have the skill of a lariat. And I have a lariat here, and you have to be very skilled in how to row. And we learned that from vaqueros. The Mexicans taught us that. It's called lariats. So you had to learn that. And not many people were specialized in that.
Would lariat and lasso be the same?
The lasso is a bastardized version of the Spanish version of lariat, which vaquero. And a lot of the terms that the cowboys in the West used came from their Mexican counterparts who taught them that, taught the Texicans that. Being people of color, we almost had a freeway to their lives because the Native Americans and the Mexicans just dug us. If you were putting together what they call men for a cattle drive, and there's maybe 12 or 13, it behooved you to have 5 or 6 men of color on it because we could get you through Indian territory. Indians wouldn't mess with us, they loved us, they did. A lot of Comanches, Kiowas, Pawnees, Cheyennes. If you had blacks it's called drivers, the drovers, they basically let you go through. You had to give them a few beefs, a few cattle. An all-white cattle, all-white, which was rare. People don't know that. 40 to 50% of most of the cowboys who did the great cattle drives were people of color.
River is tonight.
It's tonight.
And you've written and composed for this play. Can you talk about your composition?
Yeah, I married so many different styles because of how I grew up. You know, I grew up my formative years from 1 to 12 here in New York. And being a child in New York, you just have an edge on the world. I'm sorry, it is that way. You just have an edge because we're exposed to dance, ballet, opera, funk, R&B, country, jazz. And what the beautiful thing about it is, rather than our counterparts in other parts of the world or country, we have an integrated, you would go and see a ballet where you'll see someone of color. Or growing up, I would see opera with Leontine Price in that. So I brought that all to this play. I did. You'll see elements of that all in the music that I've written. I hope it comes across, which is why I carefully selected these incredible musicians with me, because I had some country cats with me, and they can only play one style. And I was at an impasse with that.
But you've married it and made it all your own.
I tried, and I helped, and I tried to not just make it on my own, I tried to make it user-friendly to the ears of those who hear different things. There's this for you, there's country, there's swing, there's little jazz. Throughout the 2-hour performance, I try to hit upon something that hits a heartstring in everybody.
Electric red world sees us tonight. We're lightning bolts in the sky, flashing with thunder.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual, and she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you and we'll figure it out."
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Hi, I'm Jen Jade, and I love What's Eat in Harlem.
You can go ahead. Ooh, I really don't care. Ooh, you can go ahead.
I believe history can change people. If they understand the contributions of different groups to New York City, then they can begin to appreciate how diversity has strengthened us as a nation. My name is Stacy Toussaint, and I am the creator of the Slavery and Underground Railroad Tour. I like to say that we're a company with a social mission, and that is to tell the stories that are not being told about New York City.
What was your background prior to creating this tour?
I practiced law as a commercial litigator and also securities attorney for 10 years.
So how did you begin to research all the information that New York has to offer?
Well, I also had a background as an adjunct assistant professor at CUNY, so I used those skills to help me do research, and of course, my legal skills to help me do the research for this tour. I've been to over 35 countries, and I would learn about the art and the food and the culture of these people. And I knew that I lived in the greatest city of the world, but I felt something was missing, that there was a need for someone to tell the stories of everyone in New York, not just certain groups.
That's exciting. Let's begin. I'm ready to learn something.
Awesome. So on this tour, we teach people that New York would not exist if it weren't for the work that was done by enslaved people. That's because when the Dutch came here in 1624, they did not have sufficient labor to build this colony. Right. So a good way of thinking about the early enslaved people brought here is that they were colony builders. They are the ones that built the wall after which Wall Street is named. Broadway, one of the most famous streets in the world, was actually first a Lenape Indian trail broadened through enslaved labor. The Lenape Indians were the original inhabitants of this area that we now call New York and had been here since 10,000 BC.
Wow.
Contrary to what you may have learned or others may say, the Lenape did not sell their land. The Lenape did not have the concept of property ownership. These were their ancestral lands. So when we think about the very origin story of New York and how it's been relayed to us, we have to understand that it's an expression of power. It's an expression of who gets to tell the story. And we're here, and one of the purposes of this tour is to tell the true story of the diverse people that made New York City possible.
Right now we're at the New York's municipal slave market?
Right.
Seriously.
So in 1711, the Common Council, which came before our city council, they established a municipal slave market. So this was actually run by the city. And the reason they did that was because by the 1700s, by the mid 1700s, 1 in 5 New Yorkers were enslaved.
1 in 5?
1 in 5, 20% of the population was enslaved. And so they wanted a place where slaveholders could come to auction people off, and also where these enslaved people who perhaps weren't working on something for the slaveholder at the time could wait to be leased out.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this and this occurring in New York.
Now, yes, it had occurred in New York and in this actual location. So we have to remember that New York has had a lot of landfills. So we're standing on Water Street. The waterfront came up to this location. So when you see this picture here and you see a pavilion on the waterfront, we're actually standing at the location where people would be taken from the slave ships after they had been kidnapped and where they would be auctioned off in sale.
Ooh, I really don't care.
Scene 103, take 1.
I thought we'd be on the same page about this, and we're not.
How do I know the way I'm gonna respond to it?
I want you to get the vaccine because I want you to be safe.
What if you end up in the hospital? That's what I'm scared of.
If you was to die, man, that would literally kill me, man.
I hug you.
Yes. If it made you feel that way, bro, I would probably do. I love you too.
When I got the opportunity to get her, there wasn't no choice. I told myself, I'm gonna take custody of my daughter. It's my baby. That's what we're supposed to do as men, take care of our home, build a foundation, you know what I'm saying? Love, our money, she's my purpose. I'm here to walk with her, hold her hand until she can walk alone. Ain't nothing like being a father in this world.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you, and we'll figure it out.
blocks along Wall Street actually show you where the wall after which Wall Street was named, where it stood. And they go all up and down Wall Street. The significance is when we think about the economy of New York City and Wall Street, it's impossible to truly understand its origins without understanding that enslaved people were the foundations of building this economy. But there's something else that's significant about this part of Wall Street, which is that building over there, which is the J.P. Morgan building, is on the former location of a stop on the Underground Railroad, which was Thomas Downing's Oyster House.
What were special markings for some of the stops on the Underground Railroad?
So often people ask me that question, what were the markings? And what I say to them is that you should think of the Underground Railroad as operating almost like a sleeper cell. It's not marked. It doesn't have one specific location, because if it did, it would be compromised immediately. Right. In the case of Thomas Downing, he was what they called a station master on the Underground Railroad. So during the day, he was a successful businessman running one of the top oyster restaurants in the city, even as an African American in the mid-1800s.
Wow.
But at night, he and his son George hid people in the basement of that restaurant. They were station masters on the Underground Railroad. So the Underground Railroad was comprised of people who, when called upon, would do their job, would do a task to save someone. And then they would move them on to the next location. Now, the next location might be another station or safe house, or it might be Canada, which was the one place where the slaveholders couldn't follow you. What people often think of, they think about free states and slave states.
That's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm thinking of free states, I'm thinking of slave states. I'm thinking, once you made it to New York, weren't you safe? Wasn't this considered the free state? Wasn't this, the goal? Now, I know some people went to Canada, just to be completely away from everything, but I thought, once you make it to New York, you're good.
So what was so ironic about the circumstance was that when the South was talking about protecting slavery, they would also often talk about states' rights, but states' rights only when it helped them, because the federal government intervened to create fugitive slave laws that allowed slaveholders to go into free states and kidnap people. Yeah, kidnap
their property.
Well, it was even worse than that.
That's all the time we have for now. But join us next time on What's Eating Harlem. See you uptown.
Never the right moment, girl. Always with somebody else, so hard to get at you. Under different circumstance, we would be more than just friends, hiding from the truth.